Good evening, and I'd like to welcome you to the January 22 member meeting on the business of architecture. Our exclusive sponsor for this meeting is NIT. Our visionary sponsors for 22 are Clyde Juba and NIT. And our platinum sponsors are BWA Architecture and Interiors, Grand Canyon Development Partners, Harris Consulting Engineers, and TJK Consulting Engineers. Before we get started, I'd like to start off with a brief introduction on our outlook for 2022. In 2022, AIA Las Vegas will actively seek to promote and enhance the business of architecture. These past years, leadership of the AIA has sought to focus on issues of climate change, affordable housing, and the collaborative art of architecture, all of which have been weaved into the tapestry of our chapter in support of our strategic goals. The focus this year is to further build on these goals by intertwining the business aspects of what it's meant to be an architect and educate our overall community on the impacts of architecture. The glorious art of designing astonishing spaces is still the cornerstone of what we do. Supporting these efforts requires a strong foundation in business development and relationship building, marketing and branding, legal, accounting, human resources, training and mentoring, technology, strategic planning, and leadership. One of the most important aspects of our theme is ensuring that there is a public policy in place necessary to protect our profession and the business within. AIA Las Vegas will work to reach out to our affiliate organizations of designers, contractors, engineers, landscape architects, manufacturers, suppliers, and all others in the design and architectural community to collaborate with them to find solutions that will help to build a more resilient community for all. Within the business of architecture, at the forefront of our decisions, we will build on what we have accomplished in 2021, expanding our knowledge and efforts to achieve the outlined goals of build strong relationships with key legislatures and stakeholders, fight for policy that gives the architects the same level of protection as our allied colleagues, develop strategies to promote and grow the AIA Nevada PAC, get buy-in from firms and communities to contribute back to the AIA, combat climate change, work to increase the opportunity for affordable housing, reach out to the students in all grade levels to encourage interest in the profession, assist and mentor emerging professionals to become licensed, collaborate with allied members on projects and programs, promote justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion in the profession and in our community, and maintain a strong partnership with the UNLV School of Architecture. With that, I'd like to introduce our panel this evening. With us from Forte Specialty Contractors, Scott Acton, from Folk Landscape Architects, Anna Pelletier, PLA, from Punch, Clemente Secoria, AIA, and from TERP Consulting, the world famous Jim Bagley, PE. So thank you folks for joining us tonight. We should have an interesting and lively discussion on the business of architecture. So if you wouldn't mind, Scott, would you start us off and take a few minutes and tell us about you and your business, please?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to participate. My business, we've been an experiential-based contracting business for many years. I'm a third-generation experiential builder. My grandfather started out with Walt Disney and participated in Matterhorn and Pirates of the Caribbean. My dad carried it on with the Jaws attraction and Dracula's Castle at Universal. So as a kid, I started out really young in the shop. And I've had just this amazing gift of being in the right place, I think, for some of these projects. And I moved to Vegas to start on the pirate ships at Treasure Island and have been here ever since, 28 some years now. And so our business has evolved over the last decade or so, a lot more than before. And we're kind of focused more on the development side now and luxury residential, still in the theme park business, but we're a very collaborative contracting group, and that's why we support the AIA like we do, is because I think the collaboration between architects and contractors can benefit developers by just having a more collaborative approach.
That's interesting. I didn't know you guys were involved in Disney. Maybe we can get some passes and go down there and check out your handiwork at some point. Also joining us tonight is Anna from Folk Landscape Architecture. Anna, would you take a few minutes and tell us about yourself and your practice, please?
Sure. Anna Peltier, been in Las Vegas since 2007. Moved here from Michigan. Essentially, when I graduated from college, the joke was last person left in Michigan, turns out the lights. So we all kind of left to look for work elsewhere. And I landed in Las Vegas, and then tragedy of the recession, and got laid off a couple of times and decided, screw that, I'm just going to start my own firm. So I started AIA Landscape Architecture. Some of you guys may have heard of that. We've been a supporter of AIA and a sponsor for years. And we've been growing and adding new staff, and we have a really diverse crew now. So we decided AIA was kind of my past, and we wanted something that we could all kind of take a good bite of going into the future. And so we've rebranded recently as Folk Landscape Architecture. And I've been in the business for, this is our 9th year. And we've been a supporter of AIA since the beginning, because we work with architects so very much. Probably about 80% of our business comes from architects, and we really love the coordination and getting that creative design going with very like-minded professions. So,
well, great. Yes, thank you for the years of contributing to the AIA. I know you've been on the board for almost as long as I have, so we appreciate
not even close, John.
your service. So one question from Michigander to another Michigander: is it blue or green?
Green.
Oh, okay. Well,
I know we've got some other blue fans here. I think I saw Dennis.
I know you have some Angel fans listening tonight, so I guess go Tigers. So thank you. Also joining us from Punch, Clemente, please tell us about yourself and your practice.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be part of this panel tonight. I've been in town. I've lived here for close to 32 years now. So I moved to Vegas pretty young. My parents decided to come out here sight unseen. Just kind of showed up one day in the desert and just kind of made home here. I personally come from a kind of strong construction background. My family, my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, all come from a very strong construction background. So inherently, as a young child, well, as a teenager, my first job was working on a masonry job site, and I had the option to ultimately stick with the kind of laborious part of our industry or get into kind of the other aspect of things. And my love for architecture started at a very young age. I actually got my first job in an architecture office at the age of 18, as I was finishing up high school. I was one of the members of the student AIA like competitions. So I was really early on involved in kind of AIA and in architecture, and ultimately kind of propelled me through school. Got my master's here at UNLV, and have been in the industry ever since. About 6 years ago, I started Punch with two other partners, Drew Gregory and Zach Ostrowski. Both have been equally dedicated to the industry as much as I. Old classmates of mine from ultimately our freshman year at UNLV. And so we probably had a little bit too much to drink one night and had an idea of, just teaming up and going after some really great public art competitions. And from that, we ultimately kind of started our own architecture firm. And our architecture firm really is a very design focused firm, right? We do public art, we do interior design, we do architecture design. We do anything that's really challenging. And we've always, the three of us and all of our team members have really never seen the delineation between the different facets of design. We've always pursued all projects holistically from observing our clients' needs and breaking ground in a very subtle way, and the integration of landscaping and interiors in art, and all of it really is one element for us. And so that's kind of the foundation and the fundamentals of how we collaborate with our clients and other members of the industry as well. So.
Well, great, welcome, and it's nice to see another UNLV alum having an outstanding career in the field of architecture. I know Punch is a relatively new firm, so congratulations. If my memory is correct, you guys have received a fair amount of awards at the design and holiday celebration, so congratulations. And then last but not least is Mr. Jim Bagley from TERP. Jim, you may not need any introductions, but please go ahead, and for those folks that haven't met you or have had the honor of meeting you.
Well, thanks, John. I really appreciate being a part of the panel. And a little bit about myself. Jim Bagley. I founded TERP Consulting it's going to be 12 years ago next month, and we are a fire protection code consulting firm. And for those of y'all who aren't familiar with code consultants, kind of generally what we do is we serve as a liaison between AHJs, building officials, fire officials, and the design team, right? Vegas is well known for pushing the boundaries in terms of design and really wanting to walk up to the edge of what is within the bounds of code, and maybe sometimes even towing past that edge. And so that's what we do. We help speak the language and help the interpretation to convey what the design intent is, and ultimately get it implemented safely and within budget. So we also, beyond that, do sprinkler design, fire alarm design, smoke control work, accessibility. I like to say that we work within the first 12 chapters of the IBC. Generally, that's kind of where we dwell. Although as the code has expanded, we've certainly had to get into some of the later chapters, 25, 27, 31, stuff like that. But, and then of course, we work with architects all the time. I'd say about 50% of our work is direct to architects right now, but nearly every project we're on still has an architect, even if we're working directly with a developer or with a contractor, or sometimes even working through other engineers. There is hardly a project that we're on without an architect. I'd say that 90% plus, 100% of any actual construction projects, and 90% plus probably of overall, because we do code implementation for existing operations, things that don't necessarily have an architect involved. And so we're working with architects all the time, and I think it's really, really important to be a part of the community and develop relationships with those of us. We're all in this together, frankly. If anything has proven that more so than, both the Great Recession and what we went through last year. We're all in this together.
Agreed. And your primary office is in Las Vegas, but you have offices in what other cities?
Yeah, we have we're based here in Vegas, and where I've been for 20 years, but we have offices in LA, Phoenix, Denver, Baltimore, and actually we are, as of February 1st, we're going to have an office in New York City. So that's kind of brand new news to everybody. So you've heard it here first.
That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations
Thank you.
On a great career. So let's start off the business of architecture discussion this evening. So we have a few questions, some general questions. I'll direct a couple of them, but feel free, panel, to jump in as needed. So let's start off with Scott. The first question is, as a general contractor, how do you see moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years, given the pandemic and what we're facing in the financial markets with inflation and possibly an uptick in interest?
Well, I COVID for us, our business almost doubled during COVID. So hopefully, we can't sustain that kind of growth. I think that the commodity prices are driving a lot of, it's driving construction costs up. We see those leveling out over the next, couple of quarters and normalizing, I think, as the supply chain gets back up and running. And we follow some economist consultants, ITR economy, that kind of says it's going to, level off second half of next year. We'll see how true that is. I think it's going to take some people out of the market that are really budget conscious. But I think that our backlog for the next 3 years looks really, really healthy.
With that, as in the architectural industry, we struggle with finding staff, all levels, from the entry level to senior experienced architects. And the work is out there, but having the folks to accomplish the work seems to be a challenge. You think the construction industry is kind of heading in the same direction or facing those kinds of upwinds?
Absolutely. Our struggle to train younger, especially in the field, superintendents, I think with the school systems, eliminating the auto shop, weld shop, millwork shops, I think a lot of the tradesmen that are being forced into college classes that they really don't want to be in is really creating a deficit. And I know the age of our superintendents is, the average is above 55. And so that's a dying breed of tradesmen and craftsmen that have grown up in the business. And so, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of these positions are going to be really difficult for us to fill, no question.
Anna, one of the challenges I think that a landscape architect faces today is how does this climate change impact your design decisions and the directions that you provide to the architectural community on landscape architecture?
Well, for me, honestly, it hasn't changed that much, because when I was going through school, it was already a thing. And we discussed it a lot. I think I was introduced to the 2030 challenge at that point, and read the Weather Makers and was pretty impacted by that, learned about LEED and USGBC at that point. And so it's kind of been embedded into the practice since day one. So it's more immediate, and people are seem to be more interested in actually implementing some of the things that we've been trying to do all this time. So I'm hoping that it continues to go that way, and we get more of an opportunity to implement some of the sustainability practices that maybe have a little higher ticket price, but really do pay off in the long run, that are a hard sell at the beginning of a project.
So how do you see, I know the Southern Nevada Water Authority came out and made recommendations against turf in general. And probably will follow up with some limitations and some type of planting species. How do you see us as taking the leading edge in helping to develop either policies or concepts on how we can, as a design community, offer to the community the benefits of knowing how to plant and what to plant?
Oh, we can definitely, we can definitely help with that, and probably should be helping with that. I know we're all super busy with our projects and stuff, but if there's any time that we can volunteer our efforts to helping direct some of this policy, because otherwise we're going to get no turf, but not very good regulations on what we're supposed to be planting, and either it's going to be ugly as sin, or it's not going to do what we want it to do, and it's still going to be water hogs or maintenance issues. And I think the knowledge base that architects and landscape architects have are just integral to helping shape those policies in the future. So I recommend anybody you know to get involved if they can, as these things come up. And a lot of times they do have public comment periods and stuff like that that we could get involved in as a profession.
That's great. That's great. So let's switch over and have a discussion with the architect, Clemente. You know, there's quite a few consultants out in the Valley that are looking to team up with architects, especially one of the premier architectural firms in the Valley. What are 2 or 3 key skills that you look for when you're looking to retain consultants?
It's a case by case basis. As a collaborator, and as I would say, our position is ultimately the orchestrator of a project, majority of the time. Finding like-minded individuals is really important. Being able to be collaborative and open-minded in regards to new approaches, new ideas, new strategies, ultimately to accomplish elements that make the project better as a whole is really important. So making sure that people can come with that kind of attitude to the table, I think, is very critical. And I think that's fundamental to everyone that we work with.
One of the things that NIT looks at is not only their skills, but how they integrate into the community. We like to work with folks that have the same kind of outlook that we do, that, being part of the AIA giving back to the AIA is important. Giving back to the community that we live in and raise our family in is key. And, I just get a sense from knowing your work and your work product that you guys probably share the same kind of philosophy and outlook.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, giving back is a huge, it's a huge part of, I think, developing any business. And I think it's our role as architects to really better our surroundings, our communities, our spaces for our children and the people that inhabit them, right? And so that strategy really applies to all type projects for us, right? From commercial to residential.
So some of the best advice is if you really want to go to be a consultant with Punch, you need to step up and be a member at AIA and community organizations and help accomplish the same things that we want to accomplish in our communities.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I know our panel today, they all give greatly of their time and their money to not only the AIA, but to the other organizations that are important to our community as well.
And an active member in the university too. I mean, being a graduate from there, my partners are being graduates from there, I think it's our responsibility also to kind of nurture that young generation, right? And really allow them to understand, the capabilities that we have in this town. I might be going down a tangent, but there's so often we lose really great talented people because they have no desire to kind of move out. And there's just so much growth and so much development that's happening in this town. Really being able to be part of that foundation today for the next generation, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, and maybe that's some advice to the young folks that are listening tonight, that get involved in community organizations, get involved in the AIA. Employers look at those kinds of things. Those are almost as equally as important as holding your degree and your skill set moving forward. Jim, fire protection engineering, that is such a specialty skill set. So one of the questions is that we face is, why retain a fire protection engineer? What, as an architect, we're supposed to be well versed in the code. In I know that you and I have worked together for years, and you have brought to the table some insights that I don't think architects really realize is a benefit on how we can accomplish and meet the intent of the code. So any insight on when we should hire you guys and why we should hire you?
Yeah, it's interesting, John, right? Like, so we've been working together. I've been in town 2 decades now. We've been working together that whole time. And so if you recall, when I first came to town, we were working under the 97 UBC. Just take a look at the difference between the 97 UBC, for those of us that are old enough to remember the 97 UBC, to what the 2018 looks like now. And I mean, it's a larger, thicker, bigger book, frankly. And y'all as architects, you have a lot of coordination to do, and you need to be not only experts in architecture, but frankly, you need to know about everything else. You need to know about MEP, and structural, and civil, and landscape, and constructability. And so what we do is we kind of take the specialization off of y'all's plate. But we're not MEP firm. We're not a structural firm. You don't need us on every project. And we completely recognize that. But when you do need us, you really do need us, because we simply look at the intricacies of the code and really truly understand the intent, as opposed to what the actual written code says. And there are certainly blacks and whites when it comes to code implementation, but there's a lot of gray, and we work in that gray. And so there are certain projects, I guess, in the same instance, there are certain in black and white in terms of when you would need us and when you don't need us, right? Clearly, a lot of single family residential, smaller C-stores, strip malls, those are things that if you work in those realms, you've got it covered, right? In the same instance, when you start getting into high-rise construction, anything on the strip, you generally do need somebody like us. There's a lot of gray, and needless to say, we've been seeing a lot of as we're seeing a transition, as I'm sure you're aware, that we hadn't really had in the valley, right? We had more than enough land for, I'd say, right, having been here 20 years, probably for a decade, probably about going 10 years back, we had more than enough land we needed, right? Now we're seeing stick over type 1, we're seeing wrap construction, we're seeing mid-rises that we never saw outside of the strip. And so things are getting a lot more complicated. And I think as we have less and less land to work with, we're going to find that developers want creative ways to go ahead and put more and more product on smaller and smaller pieces of land. And so, I guess my advice is just, I want architects to know as much as they possibly can about the code. It's better for the industry. However, it's good when you all know what you don't know. And I think that comes with a level of just frankly experience. You get to the point that you recognize, hey, this is a little too much. And then reach out to a code consultant or a fire protection engineer and say, what do you think? And of course, my line's always available for anybody who wants to reach out. But in all seriousness, you just need to go ahead and kind of know when you're towing that line and when to at least reach out to get a gut check as to, we can really help you, or no, you can handle this. I have faith in you.
One of the great things about working with TERP is y'all you always take the free consultation call and help guide the process. And I think most architects moving forward now realize that it is a value to bring on the fire protection folks early in the process to help offset those issues that arise, because honestly, and maybe Scott can weigh on this, but the building officials are equally or better trained in the interpretation of the code than a lot of architects. I know we have EduCode and online services that help us, but truly not having a relationship with a fire protection engineer or a code consultant, sometimes very challenging to get, especially in today's environment, projects permitted and then constructed. Scott can weigh in on the impact of the inspection in the field and those kind of issues.
Yeah, it seems like it's getting more difficult, and the word you used was interpretation. And so I think that to each person that looks at it interprets it differently. So that's where having a Jim on your team to, kind of fight that battle for you is critical.
Yeah.
And it's always better, John, as you said, it's always better for us to get the call early than later, because needless to say, those fixes late in the game always cost way more than they do earlier in the game.
That is true. That is so true. So I got a general question. It was really directed to Clemente, but I think it kind of goes to everybody on the panel today. What are some words of advice that you would give a young, inspiring architect or contractor or consultant that wants to come up and start a business in today's environment? What would be 2 or 3 things that you would suggest that they do or that they don't do in getting going and moving forward?
I guess I'll start. But the first thing is learn about business. In architecture school, they briefly talk about how to run a business, or start a business, or make sure you have enough money to keep your business alive. Price your projects correctly. There's a lot that goes into getting work, keeping work, and making sure that it's executed to the point of keeping your doors open. And it's not suited for everybody. I mean, architecture has so many disciplines within architecture, and there's so many different personalities that kind of fit within it. There's great people that are very, very technical that aren't as savvy in design. There's some people that are extremely design capable, but without Jim's help, will basically kind of not make it in a sense. And that goes with business, right? And in developing a business, you need to be able to find a partner if you can't do it or aren't comfortable with it, or at least inform yourself in a way that at least can keep you in business. Because you're going to put as much effort into designing your project as keeping your business alive. And not everybody really tells you that. It's not a highlight that happens at school unless you're actively trying to find it, that information. So if you want to start a business in architecture, understand just business in general, and try to apply it. And with that, you have other goals to maintain in starting a business. What type of business do you want to become? What kind of projects do you want to go after? What do you want to do once you meet your goals and you've achieved kind of your initial ideas? Like, how do you become much more impactful in your community? Like, there's all these different things that need to be constantly discussed and revisited as you continue down the road of being in business. So those are kind of first things to think about that, again, without going out and finding this information, it's not relatively something that school teaches you or prepares you. And or if you might not necessarily have that type of exposure in your job working for someone else. That sometimes is not given. It's a lot of times people keep that kind of information close to their chest. So in starting a business, understand what it is to start a business, right?
Clemente, I think you just explained like my startup. I don't have a partner. I didn't have any business classes or anything when I started. And yeah, it was a huge learning curve. And in my case, I would highly recommend seeking out those resources. So for me, it was the SBA. They helped me like putting some collateral together so I could just get the word out there. And then for the business side, SCORE is a volunteer organization that helps small businesses with their business stuff. They taught me how to put together a cash flow analysis and all of that super fun stuff that we don't learn anything about in school. So that was a huge thing for me, was finding those resources that could help me fill in the blanks of the things that I didn't know I didn't even know I needed to know. I didn't know they existed. So that helped a lot. And then the other thing that I would highly recommend is build up your relationships, because that is going to be the most important and influential thing in your career is having those close resources, those friends, those colleagues that can answer some questions for you or help you find some work. Or and the AIA was really great for that for us.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on, if I may, piggyback on what Clemente said, because Clemente, you 100%, you nailed it. I mean, in technical fields, I think there's a tendency, and I can speak specifically to engineering, and maybe it's less applicable in the architectural realm, but I can say 100% in engineering. Engineering firms reward good engineers by making them engineering managers. And as engineers, these skills that generally make you a good engineer make you a bad manager, right? That technical, it is very, we engineers, it's very difficult to find that balance between the social skills that you need to interact with people and the technical skills that make you a good engineer. And so it's almost the better, if you are that good of an engineer, then likely you are probably lacking on some social skills. And I say this as an engineer. And so I think it's important that if in any industry, if you do want to open your own business, yeah, the first thing is you need to want to open a business, and you need to understand that being good at what you do, landscape architecture, architect, engineer, contractor, doesn't make you necessarily a good business person. And so either you can learn, right? Anna learned. I was given the opportunity, the unexpected opportunity to open my firm 12 years ago. And so I had to come up to speed. The cash flow, I totally agree with. If you are actively looking to go ahead and open a business, 6 months of expenses in the bank. That is what should be a bare minimum. But there are those of us that don't have that opportunity, and you just have to make a decision. But optimally, 6 months, because one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is that when you do the work, you don't immediately get paid. I think we all understand that as business owners, but I think that some people don't realize that you don't get paid the minute you send a check. This isn't Target, where you buy something, you immediately pay for it, right? It takes a little time. And so that cash flow is key, because you don't ever want to get desperate. But getting back around to what Clemente had said first, was you have to want to get into business. And if you recognize that you don't have those skills, then find a partner, right? And it is completely all right to have a partner that complements you or even excels in certain areas that you don't. And it's just a lot of it is about self-realization. And then assuming that you're there and assuming you've got the baseline of a company, I think the most important kind of advice I can give to anybody building a company is recruiting. 12 years in, I would argue that 100% the most important thing I do right now for the longevity and survivability of the company is recruiting. And I still play an active part in each and every person we recruit to the company, because it is so difficult to compensate for bad employees. And there's so much time and money lost in bringing somebody up to speed and training them. And so it's almost better. I know things get busy. Things are very busy right now. And you get to the point that you think, okay, I need people. And you have to resist that as much as you possibly can, because you want to make sure you have the right people. And I think that was difficult. It's always been difficult in Vegas. I think that was one of the points that John had brought up early with Clemente. But nowadays, with the ability to work from afar, I think 2020 was horrible. I don't think any of us really enjoyed it, except Scott apparently, went crazy on the business side. But I think generally most of us did not care for 2020. But I'd say one of the best things that happened from 2020 is that we now have all embraced, for better or worse, working remotely. And I think that's good for recruitment purposes for all of us. And I think frankly, it's also good, for us to embrace the younger generation in terms of recruiting, not only recruiting like people in senior levels, but I think that younger generations really are more open to it. And so I think now us older folks who might not have been so apt to go ahead and allow for working from home and remote schedules and things of that nature, I think now that it's been forced upon us, I think we all realize that, hey, the world didn't end. We were all able to operate. And I think I think that's a good thing. And so I think that then helps in terms of who you recruit, because you can be more selective recruiting if you realize you're not only isolated to having people physically here in Vegas or Denver or wherever it is you happen to have physical locations.
Yeah, no, I agree. And NIT, as an example, NIT, we learned that lesson like every other firm, that the Zoom and Teams and those kinds of technology really improve what we do. And given that, we've been very fortunate. We now just recently opened an office in Idaho. It was originally a virtual kind of location, but with enough projects and interest up there that we decided to physically open an office. And it really relies on the ability with Zoom and Teams that the folks in Idaho or in Seattle or Salt Lake can work on projects in Las Vegas or Phoenix and Texas. So it's really helped, I think, to one, grow the profession, and two, allow the younger folks the ability to have a lot of flexibility in their lives, which seems to be the trend in today's market. So we got a question from our virtual audience, and I'll just put this out to the panel. It's two questions, and the first part is, what is your marketing strategy, which is key in one, building a business and sustaining a business, and two, how much do you budget for marketing? And I guess there's three parts. There's some standards in the industry that said a certain percentage of your overall budget should be dedicated to marketing. And the third part is, who does it in your firm? So I guess, Jim, if you want to take one part of that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. We don't do much traditional marketing. I mean, we're sponsors with AIA and we're involved with AIA events because frankly, it's important. I feel like that's giving back to the community. We're a part of the architectural community. And so that's important. And it's important to keep our name out there, but I don't market per se because I think that it's important to get work through relationships, and I never want to overwhelm. I'm always very cautious. So we're a 31 person firm now, and we could be much bigger, but I wanted to control the growth because I'm so hardcore about recruiting. And so if I always fear, it's this balance. You have to walk the line of having too much work that forces you to bring on staff that you might not otherwise want to, but not having enough work. And so I'm consciously kind of doing, soft business development, working relationships, trying to expand with our existing relationships. We get, obviously with the advent of Google, we get lots of random calls nowadays, stuff that we never, ever would have seen before. And some of those have turned into very big clients and very big relationships of ours. So I think but I would argue we're atypical because, right, as a 30-person firm, we're a very small firm, but that's a pretty big fire protection firm. And on the grander scheme of things. And so I apologize if that's not the answer the audience was looking for, but yeah, we do though. I do look at business development, activities, seminars and conferences and things like that. I look at it on a case-by-case basis, and I just generally think, is this going to develop relationships, either further relationships we have, or introduce us to people that we want to be introduced to? And if that's the case, then we kind of aim towards activities like that.
I'm going to have Clemente weigh on this as an architect, but as a consultant, I would think that if you're interested in working with any architect, the best place to find them is at an AIA event, especially if you're sponsoring one of our primary functions. We have the annual golf tournament. We are now going to have a top golf tournament, which is a new event, a barbecue, and then always the holiday celebration. So you have all the architects kind of corralled, which is a cheap way of marketing architects. They're all in one room. So anyways, Clemente, your thoughts on marketing strategy and your budget and who does it?
Yeah, so that's a tough one when starting a new firm. We took the strategy of going after competitions. So we felt like making a mark with the projects would really allow us to market that. In the marketability of a project that's complete or conceptualized way differently. And we're really fortunate in the very beginning of starting our company. We took on some pretty small projects. We executed them well. We made no money at all on these projects, and really just gambled on our traits and our strengths. And we were really successful in the sense that we landed a couple of really large public art projects. We were in a competition for the Neon Gateway down on Las Vegas on Charleston and the I-15, and we developed both of those art pieces, which gave us some pretty good recognition. From there, we also we went after a national competition for the Veterans Memorial that is in Carson City. We actually became shortlisted from a national competition to 3 people. We were the only ones that got selected in Las Vegas. And from there, we actually were awarded that project. And at that particular point, we were actually really fortunate to collaborate with Scott's office. Scott built the product for us and erected it on site, and really, really great project. So we went after competitions. We were lucky to land a couple. We did a couple of residential projects that were very budget cautious, and were able to execute them great. And the style and design really started to get momentum. And so, Drew, Zach, and I, we all do marketing. Some of us are a little chattier than others when we go out and drink and socialize when we could do that. But there were one of our first projects, one of our first commercial project was actually in the Upper East Side in Manhattan. Zach was living there at the time. I was living in Vegas. I was living in Denver. He ended up meeting the owner, had dinner at the counter, was just chatting it up for about an hour or so. After some drinks, the guy was like, "Hey, I just got a shell space down the street that we need to remodel. Do you guys want to take a look at it?" One of those projects we basically did for free and crushed it. And then from there, the portfolio really started to kind of develop itself. And then, social media helps as well, getting tagged on things like Instagram and stuff like that helps, but it's all word of mouth for us. And
Do you set aside a percentage of your budget, like 4%, 6%, that's dedicated
It's-
solely to marketing dollars?
not really, we don't have like a strict amount, right? And it's just, no, I mean, it's never been, it's been much more fluid, right?
Okay.
And the word of mouth aspect for us helps a lot. There's 10 of us now. In the last 6 years, we've grown purposely slowly. And so we've been able to kind of control that growth. We spend maybe more time interviewing our clients than our clients spend interviewing us. And it's because each one of our projects are so, heavily handed in design and so unique that we just want to make sure we're really comfortable. These projects, as we all know, are so long. They're nothing about our industry is a quick burn. I mean, Jim, I know you're knocking them out, dude, but like for us, these are 3-4 year long projects at different scales, but it's very important for us to really spend the time and interview our clients and make sure that we go down a path together, right? And we don't want to be halfway through to where we're just at opposite ends because we don't really see eye to eye. So no, we don't. I'm sure I could probably look up the bills associated to dining and entertaining with some clients and things like that. But there isn't like a hard, we're spending 4% of our expenses next year on marketing. We don't unfortunately, I mean, the AIA, it's great to be associated member with the AIA. It's great to be active in the design and the review process of the AIA. And some of our clients don't know of the AIA, some kind of do. But it's a nice platform to ultimately kind of be on par with our peers. And it helps with, just kind of exposing some of the work that we do with some people. And I think that's the real benefit of it, right? It's another one of those media platforms that allow for our work to be displayed.
Great, thank you. So Scott, as a contractor, I would be interested in hearing your strategy on how you market and develop your clients. And do you guys have a budget or a certain percentage of your overall budget that you spend marketing? Or there was an additional question that came in. Do you hire an outside consultant that specifically does marketing? We're kind of blurring the lines between marketing and business development, but or do you guys just do your stuff internally?
We don't spend a percentage, and there's no rule of thumb, but I've in my experience, traditional marketing we have spent some money on it on and off. It's like, let's try this or do this, but the results are nil compared to doing what you say you're going to do it on time, exceed your clients' expectations, provide them the highest level of service of how you would treat, how you want to be treated. And my customers become my biggest sales. Like every project that we do, if it goes the way we want it to go and we deliver, that client tells 4 or 5 clients, and it's been amazing for us. Some of them painful, some of them cost us money, some have not gone our way. But one of our core beliefs at Forte is do the right thing, even when it costs us money. And so it's just not all about the hair pulling. Sometimes it's about being, honoring your word. If you say you're going to do it. And I think, in business out there, when you talk about the sub-market and employees and how things go, if you can provide that level of service in whatever business you're going to start, be it architecture, consulting, construction, you will find success.
Yeah, that's good advice. I appreciate that. We have another question that popped up, and I think this may be directed to Clemente. What is the best way for a new interior design company to market to architects and consultants?
Show up with the portfolio or send over a portfolio. I've had some consultants show up that way where they're like, hey, this is what we do. We'd love to collaborate in the future. And so that for us, that kind of incentive is like, it's great. It just shows the type of personality with the people that we like to work with. So even though our doors are locked for security reasons, people, will find a way in, and that's it's great. I've had that fortunate. I've had that with employees too, where I think it's the same approach. If you really want to collaborate with someone, you have to make the effort, and I think people will automatically see that, because I think the personality behind that kind of direction or that kind of like desire to want to collaborate with you will just kind of open up people's eyes and really see that, hey, maybe we should consider like talking to them. But yeah.
And I think the AIA is a good vehicle to help make those kinds of introductions for new consultants, new firms that want to get involved in the practice. That I know Carlos and Kelly have always been willing to a list of architects, even if you're not looking for those folks, they're always willing to entertain them, because you never know, you might be able to find that needle in the haystack, and it's a good thing. Well, we're getting close to the 6:30 mark, so just a couple of more questions, and this is we'll go down the panel starting with Scott. What inspires you to invest in the AIA?
I love the creative side of architecture, and like Clemente mentioned, we had the privilege of collaborating with them on the construction, and it was an extraordinarily tight budget. And one of the AI awards that Clemente won at the last event was a project that they're doing for us at Post Buffalo. And so to be able to collaborate with architecture and come up with the right constructability to be able to add more creativity and not, I don't think that every project that, even though every project is budget driven to some degree, I think when we work together early on in the process, the product is always better. And so, I think getting to know more architects and kind of showing our wares of where we add value when we come and work with architects, and how they can, they come up with this beautiful dream and vision, and a lot of times it's slashed by budget or whatever it is. And if we can bring more of that to the table, and I think that architects will greet us with open arms. So I mean that's why. And I love to mentor young people. I think part of the advice, I didn't get to really weigh in on the mentoring side of starting a young business, but if I was starting again, I would find a mentor in the business you want to be in. You'd be surprised, I think, if you were to pick up the phone and call a CEO and say, hey, can I shadow you? Can I work for you? Can I help you? We bring interns in all the time to come and spend summers with us. And so, ask the question.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know NIT has invited interns to come in the summer. We try to help the young folks, those in college or even senior high school kids who are interested in going into the profession, that come in and shadow us for a week or so. So it's always rewarding to see the smiling faces and their enthusiasm to become an architect.
Yeah, you can see the ones that really light up, and right away when they raise their hand and say, I want to do this no matter what. And so
yeah,
those are the kids we want to spend time with. But thank you for having me on the panel as well. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we always welcome your input, and thank you for your years of support and continued support as we start to move forward. So Jim, what inspires you to invest in the AIA?
Well, I think it's, AIA is such a big part of the design community. And as I said, I mean, even though we have, there's a number of projects that we might not work directly with architects. Architects are almost inevitably involved in everything we do, right? We work in the built community, and y'all design the built community. And so I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a business aspect to it, because of course there is. But honestly, more important is I feel it's necessary to give back, right? Like we have a successful, thriving business here in Vegas because of AIA and the connections I made with AIA. When I first came to town, I didn't know anybody. And so to your point, I started showing up at AIA events. I mean, that's how some of these relationships from the people that I met 20 years ago are some of the strongest I still have now. And so I feel it's when you're able to, right? And we're lucky. We've been successful. We have the opportunity to give back. And so when you're able to give back, I think you should, because a thriving architectural community here in Vegas benefits all of us. And obviously we're a benefactor of that because of the fact that we work directly with y'all. So I just think it's important for AIA to remain strong, particularly during the tough times, right? During the Great Recession, during COVID, I mean, during whatever may be ahead of us. Hopefully nothing in the near term, but there are always going to be challenges. And I think that's what drives me to be involved with AIA however I can.
Great. Thank you. Anna, what inspires you to invest in the AIA?
Oh, so many things. Well, first it started out as, I think I joined because I was leaving the USGBC for just because it was kind of breaking up a little bit, and I needed a new outlet for my for sustainability stuff. So I joined the COAT committee, and that was when I first joined the AIA, I think was that time. And then I got involved in the board, and since then AIA is giving me so many opportunities to meet new people, and I've made so many friends through the AIA. And I like to do volunteer work a lot, and the AIA and the committees have allowed me those opportunities to do those boots on the ground type of stuff, or pretty much whatever you guys let me do a lot of stuff in my committees. So I had the opportunity to work with the elementary schools doing the design charrettes for the outdoor garden classrooms, and now working with the Women in Architecture Committee with Monica from Brazen. There's so many opportunities to give back through the AIA and to build my relationships through the AIA. And it's just it's become a lot of my life, actually.
That's great. And we truly appreciate your dedication and all the time and energy that you have spent.
Thanks, John. I appreciate having me here, and I'm just so honored to be a part of this community, our community.
And we continue to look to you in the future. So, and then Clemente, first off, you had I received a compliment from our virtual audience that says, "I live in Carson City. Great job on the memorial at the Capitol grounds." So hats off to you.
Honored
and
to be
then
part of it.
the final question for you is, what inspires you to invest in the AIA?
Our ability to be mentors is huge. Our legacy as individuals that change society by using the built structure is important for us. And I think that's a fundamental just approach in how we pursue our career, right? For me, you work so hard to get to a certain point with education and design and learning and starting a business. There comes a point in time where you switch gears or start thinking about switching gears, and it's not about you, right? It's about what you can do for others, what you can do for your community, what you can do for people that are are looking to take your place in the future and inspire people. And so the AIA allows us a platform to ultimately be an active member in that respect. That goes with being involved with the university, with AIAS, and really it's just, I recall moments of being in high school and looking at, you know, this AIA competition for high school kids, and I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And it honestly, it kind of propelled me to be where I'm at today. And it's those small moments that that can change someone's direction in their life. And so being a mentor, giving back, any facet is important for us. And the AIA allows us to be an active member in that. So
That's great. That's great. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you folks for your time and energy today. I know, as Carlos said when we started, it's tough sometimes after a day in the trenches to jump on a Zoom call for an hour and a half and answer some questions. But we truly appreciate your opinion and your input and your dedication to the AIA, to the Las Vegas chapter, to our colleagues in the North, and to the state. I'd also like to thank Carlos and Kelly for putting this together at the last minute. Thanks to the pandemic, we decided to be virtual this month. I think we will be virtual next month, and hopefully in March, we will have our first in-person meeting. So I don't see any other questions coming in from our virtual folks. So I'd like to thank them for participating and for their questions and comments. And with that, I would say thank you and have a great evening. We'll see you guys next month.
You.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.